There are at least 10 people running for North Charleston mayor, including businessman John Singletary. He tells me his vision for North Charleston if elected mayor for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. John Singletary, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Always a pleasure, Quintin.
Oh, I appreciate it greatly. Needless to say, you are a North Charleston resident, a business owner, and of course, a mayoral candidate for the city of North Charleston. And tell me, John, as we sit here right now, how many times have you ran for this particular seat?
This will be my third time. I ran in 2015 and ran in 2019.
Okay, three times, okay.
Yes, this will be the third. Three is a charm.
Well, John, let me ask you this. You say free is the charm, but
Absolutely.
is this your ego running this time, or are you actually running for the people?
I'm running for the people. If you take a look back, this has been a continual effort that has culminated into 2019. In 2015, when I initially started, we had a total of 6,000 people voting in the city of North Charleston. We had 4,000 whites, 2,000 African Americans. In 19, we had a total of 4,000 whites to vote and 8,000 African Americans. This time, we believe that there will be about 5,000 to 6,000 Caucasians and right at about 10,000 to 12,000 African Americans. So what we had to do is actually build a base in the African American community that reflect the demographics. With 50% African American, 38% Caucasian, 12% Hispanic, Asians, and other. We just simply in the African American community had a low voter participation. So through educating them on the issues, we built a voter base that now says that we are in a position to be victorious in the election.
Well, John, why didn't you build that base when you ran the first time?
Well, the education process takes a while. It's not something that happens overnight. We initially never went after any of the then incumbent, Keith Summy. We never went after not one of his votes. We decided to build a base from the ground up that we were educating to the issues that we wanted to be on the table because that was important to them. And it has taken 2 elections to do that. And so now we've built it such that we are the deciding vote, not a contributing vote.
Well, John, you say that you didn't go after Keith Summy's vote, but you did go after him in the past 3 elections. So,
absolutely, him as the mayor, absolutely. Him as the mayor because I felt that I could do a better job in providing a better quality of life for all citizens, black, white, Hispanic, and other, in North Charleston. So the position of mayor, absolutely. But in terms of his voter base, his 4,000 voter base, that we did not go after.
So what was your voter base back then, the first time around?
Well, the first time I had no voter base. In 2015, again, from 2009 to 2011, 4,000 whites voting 2,000 blacks. We had to build a voter base, and that is what we did from the ground up. We, of course, each time we run to win. We run to win, and with no backup plan to actually win the election. But it has taken a while to build that voter base. And so, and in fact, in 2019, we had built the voter base such that it was twice, we outvoted all other races combined in the city. And as a result, it is our opinion, and based on the facts, based on the data, based on the official reports, we actually won the election by more than 2,000 votes. That's an ongoing issue, but as long as we can get the votes properly counted, I am fully confident that we'll win this election.
But John, without a backup plan, sir, did you actually run to lose those past 2 elections?
No. We ran to win. But if we did not win, we were willing to regroup and come back to the starting line to do it again. We didn't run to lose. We ran in order to win the election, and we believe that we did that in 19. But however it turns out, we are willing to take our team, revamp, and come back again in order to start at the starting line and then win the next election.
So what's your backup plan now?
No backup plan. We're in it to win. This election is going to be probably the most important in the history of North Charleston. And we're not in it with a backup plan to do anything except win. That's the only goal we have in mind. We believe that our strategy, the same strategy that has built 8,000 African American votes, is the strategy to win, and that's what we're going with.
So you all have regrouped. So let me ask you this then. How are you going to make certain that you don't lose this time, John?
Well, what we're doing is we contacted the Department of Justice to ask for them to provide a person to come and observe that will look at tabulation, calculation, and computations. We made sure that this time, in addition to the team we had in previous elections, that we're out hitting the bushes, educating people more than ever. We've got a brochure that's out. This time it's much more robust, and it's got many of the issues that are important to the voters in North Charleston. And so we are doing the same thing that we did before, the very same thing that has quadrupled the vote in the African American community. And we feel that as long as we do that, it has been successful and we can get our vote properly counted, then it guarantees us a win in this election.
You talk about quadrupling the African American community, but did that actually quadruple the votes for your team?
Well, it didn't quadruple the votes for our team based on the official report, which we know is incorrect because there were multiple reports that were produced by the very same machine 17 minutes apart. And so when we take a look at whether it reflected in the final official result, it did not. But we can't trust that result simply because we know it is incorrect. When you have got, in some cases, let's just take for instance, if anyone in the world were to go on to Charleston County election results and take a look at Patriots in the precinct report, you'll see they say there are a total of 143 people eligible to vote, 126 actually voted, but then they only counted 5 of the votes. So they're only counting 4% of the vote in the African American community because Patriots happens to be a all African American precinct in terms of the voting for the 2019 election. And so when you're only counting 4% of the actual vote that goes to the table, there's really no way to say that the numbers are correct or that whether you got a fair chance at the election.
So how many machines are we talking, John?
There are actually a total of 50 precincts in North Charleston. And if you're counting only 5% in 50 precincts, it's considerable when you consider the number of votes that are not counted for the entire election.
So how many votes were not really counted altogether for 2019, for instance?
Well, we're not sure. And the reason why we're not sure is they have not been forthcoming in giving us the information that has been requested, not only through the Freedom of Information Act, but also through discovery during the protest. They have simply failed and refused. For instance, there was a total of 100 applications collected absentee vote for Dorchester County, but total. But however, in at least one precinct, the incumbent received more than 100 votes in one precinct, nearly 400 votes total. You can't have 400% of the applications. But this election coming up is going to center around the vision that I have for North Charleston. And the vision for North Charleston is simply to make sure that, one, we get the votes counted, two, and that's for all citizens in North Charleston, to make sure that the crime rate in North Charleston is decreased such that all neighborhoods are safe to live in, to make sure that we, in terms of housing, fair housing needs to be available for all citizens in North Charleston, affordable housing. And right now, we have a shortage that in the affordable housing category, which I have a strategic plan to bring housing that's affordable to North Charleston for the citizens. to make sure that there's a grocery store in the food desert. There's no reason why we should be one of the richest cities in the state with food deserts. To make sure that our homeless population has somewhere to lay their head that is inside, not sleeping outside with blankets supplied by the city. These are the kinds of things that my vision in terms of North Charleston will bring to increase the quality of life for citizens.
And I want to get to that in just a second. I know I don't have much time, but let me ask you this. What is the current population for the homeless here in this town?
There's about 5,000 when you look at for the city of North Charleston.
And where exactly are the homeless population congregated the most?
Well, they are distributed throughout the city. For instance, if you go to Rivers Avenue near Walmart, there's a huge section there. If you go to Dorchester Road, all the way down by the IHOP, there's a huge section there. There's on Ashley Phosphate, Ladson Road. I mean, there are homeless populations that are scattered throughout the city under our bridges, in our wooded spaces, going up near Otranto, in the wooded area there by the Northwoods Mall. We as a nation should try everything possible to make sure that we take care of the least of our people. There are cities, Helsinki, for instance, that there is zero homeless population. And one of the things that is a part of my overall vision is to make sure that we eradicate homelessness throughout the city of North Charleston. Best practices throughout the nation and in other countries says that it is possible, it can be done. And so that is my vision in terms of the homeless population, is we completely get rid of homeless in the city of North Charleston.
So from the time that you ran for mayor for the first time to right now, how much has that population increased?
I don't know how much it has increased in terms of the homeless population. In 15, when I initially started, we took a look at Union Heights over near the DSS building, under the bridges on Dorchester Road, and different places. And at that point, we began to see more of the homeless population that in some cases had been ignored by the city. And while we have not kept a direct count of it, we know that it has increased because more and more as I drive around, I see people who are homeless, and they are now at a point where they are simply sleeping on the streets, on the sidewalks. And that's something that in 15, wasn't as prevalent, but here in 2023, we tend to see it all the time.
So where are the increased areas of population in the city right now?
In terms of the homeless population,
yes, the new
we've seen more at the Walmart on Rivers Avenue. I've seen more off of Ladson Road, across from the Sphinx. That's been the new Sphinx that's been built there. Down by the Sonic, where they have the bridge and the little river on Dorchester Road. I've seen more under the bridge on Dorchester coming from West Ashley, 526. More on Dorchester and I-26. And so scattered throughout the city, the homeless population is increasing, and that's something that is a priority for me in terms of getting rid of.
And I want to get back to all of that in just a second, but you talked about obviously 2015 when you first ran for mayor of North Charleston, and I know that you said that, listen, you and your team regroup. So now that you all are regrouping, what mistakes that you all made in the past two cycles that you now are picking up on and saying, hey, we need to tackle?
Well, the largest thing is that we felt that we did not have to look at the South Carolina Election Commission, the Dorchester County Election Commission, and the Charleston County Commission, that we did not have to keep tabs on them in terms of them literally committing administrative fraud. We felt that they would do the right thing, and they did not. And ironically, the director for the South Carolina Election Commission, Marcy Andino, has resigned. Dorchester County, Todd Billman has resigned. Joe Debney from Charleston County has resigned following the protests that we actually filed. And so this time, that's why we went to the Department of Justice to make sure that we have requested a observer to come who is going to take a look at the tabulations, the computations, and the calculations for the election. It's kind of like, Joseph Stalin saying that it's not the man who votes, but the man who counts the vote that is important. And so we took our eye off of the integrity of elections for the state of South Carolina, and we won't do that again.
Okay, John, let me ask you this then. So when did you all protest this?
We protested it immediately. As soon as the election's over with, you've got a short window in order to file a protest, which we did. We filed the protest timely, and during the protest, the documents that we had, the videos, they failed and refused to look at the videos. They supplied an exhibit for Exhibit C for the protest. And if you look at that exhibit, it's a fabrication. On the face of the document, it says, for instance, for Fort Dorchester High School, 150 people are eligible. 154 actually voted. 462 people signed the poll list. Yet they refuse to let us see the poll list. They are claiming that every poll list for the mayor's race in 2019 was lost. And so those are the kinds of things.
How many poll lists were there altogether for 2019, I should say?
There should have been a total of 50 poll lists, one for each precinct, because when people come in, they actually will sign that poll list.
Now, how many videos do you all have right now?
We've got about 16 videos that were taken throughout the city in different places, Fort Dorchester being one of them, to show that there was a backlog of people in Dorchester County. What happened was there were 18,000 people who were registered active voters. However, the SEC and the Dorchester County and ES&S only loaded 3,083 into the database. So they only loaded a little over 16% of the active voters into the database. That means that you've got about 15,000 people who are active voters that were denied their constitutional right to vote. And, I know we keep talking about the 2019. More important is my vision for 2023.
But let me ask you this.
I'm happy to answer questions on the 19th.
Let me hold that for just a second. But John, you just mentioned that. Do you believe by going around basically saying, hey, this was a stolen election, do you think that's really hurting you and your campaign? Have people tuned this out by now?
No, because I provide the documentation. I provide proof and evidence of what I'm saying. If I were simply saying it without evidence, then yes, it would. But there is no problem in telling the truth when the truth can defend itself. Like I said, don't trust me, don't take my word. Go to the Charleston County election results and look at the precinct reports for Patriots. Add it up yourself. And like I said, I don't have to defend the truth.
So if you don't have to defend the truth, John, why not just focus on the issues?
I am. If you take a look at my 2023 brochure, which is 76 pages, anyone can go to my Facebook page. We've got a QR code. All they have to do is scan it, it pulls it up, and it gives every issue from housing to crime to the recent racial bias audit. It gives the issues that are important to the community as well as to me. That brochure for 2023, anyone who reads it will be the most informed voter going to the polls. As you know, my opinion is the reason why the incumbent's not running is because he believes either he cannot win by putting votes on the table, or he is in a situation where he didn't win in 19. He's working harder now to get the person he supported in, much harder than he's ever worked in any election. And my focus is on my vision. Again, we've distributed, in terms of the 2023 brochure, we have distributed hundreds of the document. And in reading that document, people not only understand what my vision is for the city of North Charleston, but they understand the basis for my vision. They understand that when we talk about something, we provide not only the research that we did, we provide the surveys. We provide good logic and common sense as to why not only am I the best candidate, but that my vision is the very best for the city.
So if you're the best candidate, why didn't you win 2 cycles ago?
I did.
How?
The numbers, when you take a look at it, the numbers say, like I said, when you go and take a look at the final official results, for instance,
Yes.
How do you reconcile 2 final official results, 17 minutes apart, that are totally different? If you're saying that a election, any election, is fair, you can't have 2 results. But yet, when it comes to getting that through the court system, it's no different than fighting for civil rights when it came to the right to vote or the right to have education. Simply because the first case might have been won, might have been lost, does not mean that they eventually would not be successful, or that the goal in mind was one that was not worthy. As you know, Brown versus Board, they came to South Carolina only because they knew that South Carolina would not give them a fair trial, and as a result, it was a springboard to get to the Supreme Court. This is the very same, that we have been stifled in the court system, and as a result, we have to continually fight. As we fight the legal system, we were promised a trial, and we have been denied that thus far. We had a motion hearing in which they denied hearing the motions on the table. And so it doesn't make us despondent. You know, if you go out and you win against a team and the referee does not call all calls properly, and as a result you lose, you're not afraid to play the same team again. In fact, you look forward to playing the same team because you know you can beat them. And that's why we're in the 2023 race.
But John, you just told me that the truth doesn't need to be defended. So why are you still taking us to court?
Because when you take a look at, for African Americans in United States, particularly in South Carolina, the only way for us to get real progress, it means that you have to go through the court system. Brown versus Board was a court order that allowed us to be educated. The 1965 Voting Rights Act was a court decision. So when we're talking about moving forward, and in this case, the African American community in North Charleston that's outvoting all other races combined, ultimately, you must go to the court because it is that court order that allows you to get fairness and justice. And that's ultimately what we're after.
Why not go to the African American communities and talk about the real issues with them versus going to the courts?
I do, but it's a bifurcated goal. You have to do both, because just talking to the African American community does not give you justice. We did not talk to the African American community only for the Voting Rights Act of 1965. We did not talk only to the African American community to make sure that Brown versus Board was able to guarantee the right to education. We have to fight on 2 fronts. One is to galvanize the African American community so that we're on one accord. And as you know, in North Charleston, the mindset of the African American community has moved from the supposedly dynasty of the previous administration to now the African American community is saying, not only can we win this election, but we are in the best position. We should be running this city. That is why we've got now, for instance, a group of leaders that have come together, and through a process of a rubric, they have decided that they're going to, in the best interest of the African American community, select a candidate to back. They are going to, on tomorrow, announce that. That is only because the mindset has changed for the African American community, but that has been because of the efforts that we have been putting into issue educating our public.
Has the mindset changed about you?
Absolutely. My vote count, my voter participation count goes up every single time I run. And so if we look at the numbers say that the mindset is changing for the better. If my vote count was going down, that would be another thing. But in this case, my vote count continues to rise. And as a result, we've had a crossover from African Americans being 33% of the vote to now 67% of the vote, with my vote going up every single time. Union Heights, for instance, at one point, the incumbent received 80% of the vote. In the last election, I received 80% of the vote in North Charleston 1, which is that Gethsemane precinct.
Right.
And so it tells you, particularly in the African American community, where the large majority of the vote comes from, that they are trusting what I'm saying. They believe in my vision. They believe in me. And that's why they're giving me their vote.
Why didn't they trust you before, John?
They did.
How?
My vote count went up.
You talked about the vote count. Did your issues match that vote count?
Well, what I would say is this, that the evidence is that the African American vote count has gone up every single time that I've run. There has been no time in the history of North Charleston that has happened. We've simply quadrupled the number of African Americans that have voted, and that coincides directly with the fact that I have gone out. I did a survey of 6,000 people in the African American community. They told me what their greatest issues were. And so those are the things that I've been concentrating on. Those are the things that I have done the research in order to issue educate them. And as a result, it coincides with the increased voter participation in the African American community. The numbers, the facts, the data, statistics, you have to take a look at them. And when you do, the truth speaks for itself. Now, when you say, when you take a look at whether or not the Election Commission has properly recorded that, that's a totally different thing. They have not. And
Okay.
According to the evidence based on their data, it says that they have been disingenuous in doing that. But that hasn't stopped us from not only creating a vision for North Charleston, but moving forward with the vision, dealing with the crime, dealing with the affordable housing, dealing with homelessness, and particularly dealing with the resources that have not been fairly distributed. Let's take a look at, for instance, the $100 million that has been spent outside of the African American community. We got a $20 million project going on at Park Circle, a $20 million project at Danny Jones, a $23 million project, the Natatorium, two $5 million projects for Senior Citizen Center, the Athletic Club, multi-million-dollar project. So when we talk about the fair distribution of community resources, they're not coming to the African American community. One of the things that I've said that I will do is simply to make sure that we have a grocery store built in the food desert in 12 months.
Yes, sir.
It's been promised for 15 years, and I'm saying that in 1 year, we will have a grocery store built in the food desert.
I understand all of that, and we talked about that in the previous Quintin's Close-Ups interview.
Yeah.
But John,
Yeah.
why not just stick to the issues and stop talking about the election being stolen and talking about Key Summit? Just focus on the issues.
Well, let me tell you why. Because that, in fact, is the greatest issue. The greatest issue in any democracy is that you have to be able to participate fully in the government. And so when your vote is not properly counted, the other issues are symptoms of a larger problem. The greatest problem that we have in North Charleston for the African American community is that our vote is not being counted properly. And when your vote is not counted properly, in effect, you are relegated to a badge of slavery. You see, slaves were not able to vote, participate in the government. The reason why we just celebrated the 4th of July is because of independence. No representation, but yet you're paying taxes. And so when you allow votes to go uncounted, for instance, the 17,000 people that are in donut holes in North Charleston, they are not putting a vote on the table because they're not allowed to for municipal underbounding and things like extraterritorial governance. But for those of us who are voting, see, voting not only encompasses being able to vote, but also to have that vote properly counted. And so you never get to dealing with crime or housing or homelessness or resources if you cannot fully participate in getting your vote count. And so that's why we bring it up. It is the most important thing. You don't go to the doctor and say, I've got a cut on my foot when you're having heart failure. And voting without it being counted is equivalent to the heart failure. You have to first address that, and then you can address the other issues.
How many areas in North Charleston have been annexed?
I don't know totally since the inception of the city, but we have 17,000 people who are in the city paying taxes and cannot vote. That is one of the things that is number one on the list. Once I get in office, I will make sure that everyone within the city limits is allowed to vote.
Now, you talk about everyone. Why not focus on everyone instead of just the African American community?
Because the African American community has been, in the past, denied their right to be full-fledged citizens. And so while we focus on the entire city, and I would be the mayor for the entire city, every single sector needs to be taken care of based on their needs. I have an African American agenda. I'm the only candidate who has an African American agenda, but I've got an agenda for the Caucasians. I also have one for those who are Hispanic. It's like if you have children and you have 3 children and each of those children are different. As a result, you give them different things to be successful. In the African American community, they have been denied the things necessary to be successful. So we have to focus on them because they have been denied. For instance, we give now almost $100 million in contracts. And with that $100 million, African American communities and Latinos, Asians, and other, which 62% of the population, they get less than 2% of the total contract. So is it fair to focus on the group that is getting, in effect, almost 100% of what belongs to someone else and not focus on the group that is being denied? No, it's not. For fundamental fairness, you must use parity in every study. Whether you look at the diversity study from North Charleston's fire department, you look at the racial bias study, you look at the study for the impediments to fair housing, and I can go on and on and on, but every single study paid for by the city says that what you must do is you must reflect the demographics of the city to get the full benefit of the citizens. That means that African Americans, who are 50% of the population, can no longer get less than 2% of the contracts and expect that they will flourish like everyone else.
Do you reflect the demographics of the city of North Charleston?
My administration will, yes.
No, you.
I, as an African American, I don't reflect as an individual anything except the population and the sector that I belong to. But in terms of my mentality, and if you take a look at my brochure, for instance, in my brochure, there's a section that says that there is a zero-sum game mentality by the previous administration. In other words, that there is a limited amount of resources, and for one to win, the other has to lose. I do not believe in that. So my mentality, yes, reflects what is best for the entire city, because what I say is that we can enlarge the pool, and as a result, there is fundamental fairness because it's enough that the Caucasian community, they don't have to take any less. But the African American community, because of the additional contracts and jobs that are put onto the table, they can now be ascended into where they actually are treated fair. they get their fair share. We're getting 25% of the jobs and 15% of the pay, but 50% of the population. There's a problem with that.
But John, where was this mentality 2 election cycles ago?
It has not changed, and that is why we have now quadrupled the vote for the African American population. Our actual mentality, as well as our efforts, have not changed one bit. We have been consistent in the issues that we have put forth to the community. We have been consistent in educating them on their issues, and that is precisely why right now we have 8,000 African Americans voting and 4,000 Caucasians, because it was there, and it takes time to develop. For instance, if I grew up farming, you plant a seed and the seed has to grow. You do not plant the seed and then tomorrow you harvest. You have to wait until the plant grows, and now we are at a point where we should no longer plant and others harvest what we have worked hard for. We must be allowed to take full advantage of the toil that we put into the soil.
One last question, because I have 20 seconds. But what type of seed have you been sowing into this particular city?
In the city of North Charleston, the seed of educating the public, that is white, that is black, Hispanic, Asian. Since we have run, North Charleston has been more educated on political issues than any time in history. We have literally doubled the voter participation as a result of the issue education. And that is reflected with the numbers.
But John, you just told me that half of the African American population is not educated on issues. So where did this come from?
Well, half of the African American population, which would be about 30,000 people, another 30,000 are actually active voters and voting. So we will not be able to immediately get all of them at the table, but for the active voters, we see that there has been a remarkable increase. Again, we've quadrupled the voter participation of that African American community. It takes time for a seed to grow, and it is time to harvest November 7th of 2023.
John Singletary, thank you for your time on Quintin's Close-Ups.
My pleasure.